this is good news. You know, I'm often talking about things that are just kind of so upsetting, but there's a great new book out, a surprising new book. The name of the book is Apocalypse Never: Why Environmental Alarmism Hurts Us All. The author is a former extreme radical environmentalist, Michael Schellenberger, and wrote this book. And actually, the gist of it is, and his point in writing it is, he would like to formally apologize for the climate scare. He's been a radical climate, climate alarmist. He's been flying around the world and part of all sorts of big efforts, radical leftist. And he finally woke up to truth. I'll read just a couple quick clips. This is a great, great thing. And he says, on behalf of environmentalists everywhere, I'd like to formally apologize for the climate scare we created over the last 30 years. Climate change is happening. It's just not the end of the world. It's not even our most serious environmental problem. He talks about, he makes a list, a long bullet point list of corrections. Humans are not causing a sixth mass extinction. The Amazon is not the lung of the world. Climate change is not making natural disasters worse. Fires have declined 25% since the year 2003. I mean, he has point, going through basically saying that climate alarmists have lied to America over and over and over. So, last point he makes, because it might make you wonder, well, okay, here he is confessing it, which is kind of amazing. But he talks about why do all the climate alarmists, who can all see the same data, that everyone who is challenging the climate extremists, the extremist alarmists, people challenging them keep pointing out, but your predictions are always wrong, your models are always wrong, everything you said would happen, and you said 1980, 1990, and for years after year you made all these predictions, they never come true, and every time rational people based in fact try to challenge the climate alarmists. It's the same thing the left does on every other subject, the same thing we were just talking about with Nani Darwish. The left silences opposition, silences anyone who dares question them with, accusations of racism, accusations of Islamophobia. In the case of climate, they're using race now, saying, oh yes, if you don't believe in climate change, then you're a racist, claiming that climate change somehow is different for people based on their skin color. There's never, ever, ever, until this that I'm aware of, a really solid book written by a former alarmist speaking the truth. Never do the alarmists ever acknowledge, even when you point out all the things that they claimed that were wrong, that didn't happen, that their models were false, the models were based on bad data, the model predictions never happened, it never changes them, because the goal of climate alarmists is not to fix the climate. Just like the goal of Black Lives Matter and Antifa is not to bring about racial justice. It's not. It's not to bring about the thing they claim they're seeking. It is to bring control, to bring tyranny to America, to shut down everyone who dares to argue with them. So, one last thing, I'll close with this in the show today to tell you what this guy had to say about this. He says, in the final 3 chapters of Apocalypse Never, I expose the financial, political, and ideological motivations behind the people who will never back down in claiming radical, destructive climate change is happening, we're all going to die tomorrow kind of stuff. He says these people will never back down because environmental groups have accepted hundreds of millions of dollars from fossil fuel interests. Groups motivated by anti-humanist beliefs force the World Bank to stop trying to end poverty, instead to make poverty sustainable. And status, anxiety, depression, and hostility to modern civilization are behind much of the alarmism. Once you realize how badly misinformed we have been, often by people with plainly unsavory and unhealthy motivations, it's hard not to feel duped. And as to why he never spoke up sooner, his answer, mostly because I was scared. I remained quiet about the climate disinformation campaign because I was afraid of losing friends and funding. The few times I summoned the courage to defend climate science from those who misinterpret it, I suffered harsh consequences, and so I mostly stood by and did next to nothing as my fellow environmentalists terrified the public. Friends, this is great news. I'm going to try to track down that author, see if he wants to come on and talk about it. But even if he doesn't, I encourage you to get that book. I'm going to get that book Because when someone on the inside finally says, hey, this is a bunch of hogwash, it's a beautiful, wonderful thing for those of us who simply want to live life based on facts, reality, and truth.